This week on fxguidetv.
Now that Flame is being sold as a software-only product, we'd head up to Montreal to check out the latest release.
Hello, I'm Angie and welcome to fxguidetv. With the announcement that Flame was now available as software and would be fully coming to the Mac platform, John Montgomery flew to Canada to sit down with the new product manager for Flame, Will Harris, as well as several other members of the team who actually developed the new features in this latest release.
Previously, we've spoken to Philippe Serrero, who is lead product designer, and he's no longer with Autodesk. And his position actually hasn't been filled. How has that impacted the product development process?
Really, it's just a sort of organically different, I think. There was previously a product manager, a guy named Charles Amiot, who sadly passed away in a motorcycle accident. So I directly replaced him. And then the design team can essentially each have their responsibilities for their specific areas of the product, and they're masters in their own right. In effect, they each kind of work and build the sections of the product. I get to give feedback, give the user perspective, sound that against what I think the business needs.
You've had a lot of direct contact with customers in your previous job and still do now, but where do you feel that Flame needs to change compared to where it was going?
I think we need to recognize the diversity of our user base. I think that there's some really cool things that have been done over the last few years that should be continued. But I think we need to make sure we keep track of the different ways that people use our software, and make sure that we fit our features to the uses of the software.
Well, what would be an actual example of where you think Flame has fallen short and actually needs to change?
I think we need to keep an eye on how people use the software for timeline-based editing and finishing, as well as specific deep shot compositing. We know that, especially since the Smoke Advanced sort of cross-grade into the Flame product, there's a big pool of people that do that kind of work. And I think we have to strike a balance. We know that those kind of users merge, and there's many shades of gray, but we want to make sure that we hit features of a given release that can be targeted to a persona. Like specifically, we coming up in this extension 1, you have a functionality called the connected conform workflow, which is designed for folks that have to handle a lot of timelines. Be one example.
What are the top new features in the release?
It's kind of got a couple of themes to it. We've got speed, productivity, and really just listening to sort of user requests. So the big sort of areas of functionality. First of all, you're going to see some GPU acceleration of debayering raw formats, which I think will affect every workflow. Being able to access raw formats quickly, we know is important in these days of digital camera acquisition. Another theme really is this connected conform workflow, which I think will affect pretty much everyone that uses our software, in that it's a productivity enhancer for working with multiple sequences or timelines in parallel. And then we haven't forgotten the creative tools. We have a Gmask tracer, which has really been the long-awaited arrival of a batch node version of the Action Gmask. And really added to that is the idea of a new take on the tracer keying algorithm for fine edge detail. And then finally, we have a whole slew of kind of user big annoying things, as I like to call them. And they're a bunch of kind of long requested functionalities, like on-demand proxies rather than the sort of full project-based on-off switch. And then we have full screen UI components, like the reels themselves made full screen, the ability to switch to a full screen timeline or the conform list, which I think is some nice refinements. We've even sort of started to pay some attention to detail, like adding a hotkey for turning on and off overlays, which, it's these small things that really I think people will be able to appreciate. We're trying to enhance productivity. We're trying to make people faster on the software.
Well, it's important to note that debarring functionality that you talked about is only supported on the more recent versions of hardware for Flame, right?
Yeah, the debarring is really our last two hardware configs. So the Z820 with the K6000 combo, and then the Z840 with the M6000 combo, and both will see for the ARRI and for RED formats between 10 and 20 times faster scrub speed, or even real-time playback in 4K is really the benchmark we set for those formats.
Media Reactor is also a new addition to the product in the release. It's effectively a way for third parties to bring new import functionality into Flame, right?
Yeah, the way it works there is that the Media Reactor is essentially, it's a new kind of plugin that actually works in the wiretap gateway part of the Flame. So unlike a Spark, which it runs in the main effects pipeline, if you like, this is designed to expand functionality to the media hub in Flame, or the gateway as it's viewed from Lustre, and really it's an opportunity for folks to be able to expand their functionality there. It's a chargeable plugin from the guys at Drastic, but as a huge number of formats, I think 20 or 30 formats that will allow you to access some stuff that people have been asking for a long time also.
But that new functionality comes at a cost for the customers. If you take a look at a product like Resolve, some of that functionality is already built in. Why should that come at additional cost in a product that's already significantly more expensive than the others?
Well, the answer is really that this was a way to make a leap forward, to get a lot of expanded functionality that would have taken a lot of time and resources to develop ourselves. And that's the nature of a plugin, if you like. It's a way of getting a bunch of new functionality that costs some for the folks that need it, but is really a way to leap forward without us having to spend the time to work on that. We can be working on other things.
Before I came up here to Montreal, I posted on the Logic Face group page asking that group for any questions. We got some good ones. A couple of them had to do with kind of the perception of Flame. There was a day in which my clients would demand that I use Flame to finish their jobs, and there seems to be less and less, if any, buzz like that now. What is Autodesk doing to kind of help spread the word about Flame?
I mean, I guess the truth, maybe not enough right now. I think we should do a better job at getting the brand out there, not just to our clients, but to our clients' clients. I think maybe accessibility to the software sort of factors into that. It's one of the things I'd definitely like to improve going forwards.
We got a lot of questions on the Facebook page, which weren't actually questions, but feature requests. Things like better paint, text. You speak to a lot of customers. Are you hearing the same thing from them?
I think we do. I think we do hear those requests. Some of it is a big challenge. So being able to sort of completely rebuild paint, for example, is something that has been on many lists for many years. I think we should. One of my challenges ahead is to try to wrangle that in some sort of timely manner. It's hard to promise, but I believe that's it's up there. There's other things that I'm hearing from folks as priorities, like improvements to camera tracking and tracking tools. I think that's very valid. I see the never-ending need for tracking tools, right? New technologies emerging. I think there's something that we're investigating. But another theme would be how we handle EXR media, and just trying to optimize that, getting smarter about mixing the paradigm of really working with large multi-channel files, but yet you're working in a Flame, you want to be able to do archives. Those kind of, we're different maybe to other softwares in our role, but I think we need to bed down that. So I guess those would be the things I'm hearing as the sort of the rising to the top requests.
Another question we got was regarding rendering, more specifically physically based rendering, or I guess you could say even physically plausible rendering. It seems like having that addition in a compositing environment, something that's really efficient, would be a huge breakthrough for compositing.
It's something that we're definitely interested in, and I think we'll see what the future holds. But right now, to talk about, there is a new node coming to action in extension 1, which might seem a little techie to some folks, but has some interesting possibilities. It's called the GGX material. It refers to the Disney model of GGX for PBR, for physical-based rendering, and it's really it's a baby step towards essentially that understanding of material quality. It's been kind of gathering pace with our users. It's been a hot item at our user groups the last few months, so we actually kind of formalized it into a node that people can start to play with. Beyond that, I think the question in terms of perceived render quality can be multifaceted, right? It might be the surfaces of objects. It might be how much effects you can do to finish the look of something, and those are the things that are kind of in the tumbler for the future right now that we're working on.
For this visit, we thought we'd do something a bit different. That's letting you hear from the actual product designers themselves about the work that they've put in to developing the new features that you're going to see in the software. And we started out by taking a look at some of the creative features.
Hi everyone, I'm Francois Bouillon. I'm a product designer for Flame. And in the last release, the extension 2016 extension 1, I worked in the GMAS tracer.
Well, let's take a look.
All right.
See what's new. It's a whole new module.
So what we've done in 2016 extension 1 is take the core of action and build a tool that is dedicated to do matte creation, rotoscoping work.
It's a roto super tool.
A roto super tool with all the functionality that Action has to offer. So the one that are familiar with Action will quickly recognize the tool layout and the way it works. So you still have the schematic, the node bin, the object output, and analyzer if you do 3D tracking. In output, I mean, there's only the functionality that makes sense remains. So you can only create matte output, but obviously you can have as many as you want in batch. So you can do the multi-output workflow you do with Action, but now to create matte. And the node bin is having less feature and keeping just only the one that makes sense for a matte output. If we go back to roto workflow, we've made a few adjustments in regards to what was possible, how Action works actually. So now you can use a hotkey to create your Gmask automatically and then be in draw mode. So it's a little speed up in workflow in compared to what you had previously in Action. So let's say I want to create another one. You just have to do the hotkey, which is Alt-N, and start drawing. We've done also different adjustment to the Gmask workflow. So as before, there's different ways of creating the axis. If you double click on the Gmask, the axis will be at the center of the Gmask. If you bring the node to the schematic and then start drawing, the axis will remains at the center of the screen. But if you drag the Gmask as you directly in the image, you can put the axis wherever you want and then draw the Gmask elsewhere. Now this is it's offer like a flexibility, but on the other hand, I mean it was something that people were requesting to be able to override after the fact. Depending if you made either a bad decision when start drawing or just don't realize that the axis was a wrong place. So we added a functionality called offset axis. So once you have drawn your Gmask, you can enable that, and then that allow you to move the axis and put it wherever you want without affecting the Gmask position. Then removing the option will allow you to move the Gmask with the axis as normally. If you want it to be centered on the shape, then there's an option to just do that automatically for you with the center button there.
And is that universal for the whole scene? In other words, the position of the offset axis, that axis position there is set for the whole scene, or
Yeah.
not on a key frame by frame basis?
No, it's for the whole scene. So yeah, that's a very important point. So the axis itself should not have any keyframe, and the G mask also, preferably the G mask, I mean, should not have keyframe as well. So the feature of the GMask tracer basically, regroup the tracking functionality, like 3D tracker, the perspective grid, and whatever the feature you used to have in action. But we also added 3D shape, and I'll show you how interesting that can be for combining shapes. So if, for example, I want to do Boolean operators, in the old GMask you had to do play with the colors and offset of the shape. Now with 3D shape, what you can do is parent underneath the same 3D shape multiple GMask, and since they are the 3D shape itself is able to quickly offer you options to combine either in union, intersection, or use the priority to create a shape. The good thing about the 3D shape is that it's a piece of geometry, so it has its own blending mode, and then it's handled as a single object. So you can do multiple 3D shape in a scene, combine them together, and you don't have to necessarily, for all the different GMask, handle bending modes.
Yeah, that's a 2D implementation of 3D shape. But of course, again, here in this new module, you have full 3D tracking, which is also obviously where the 3D shape becomes useful.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. For the drawing workflow also, one nice addition we've done is improve the edit box that was already there. So in the past, like, the edit box was limited to the whole shape. Now it's selection based. So if I select a bunch of points, let's say on the top here, and then press Ctrl E, I enable the edit box and can then move those points using the edit box. So I can do translation directly on screen, can do the scaling, the rotation, as well as shearing. You can also use hotkey for nudging, so you can, with the one key and the arrows, do a position up and down, left, right. You can also use the Win Alt for rotation, and you can do Win Control for scaling. Obviously, you can also use the numeric field, and also if you end up in the shape is always reset itself at the next selection. So if you end up in a box where it's difficult to edit, you can undo the selection and reselect it, and then the box will be back to. So it's a nice little improvement for the usability of the GMask. One thing we added to the GMask is a tracer functionality. It's a kind of new take on the old tracer found in the GMask, where the key was limited to the section of the gradient. So if I switch to the tracer mode, tracer tab, the first let's say task you have to do, and in this shot it doesn't move too much, so I mean I can go to pretty much any frame. But the first thing you need to look into is where you want to start your first key, and then press the add on the analysis. So that will give you a background and a foreground color patches, and you can position them whatever you want. They are not limited to the border of the shape. So if I switch to F8 again, then I'll see my my matte live that is being created by moving the box around.
What's the keying algorithm on this?
Yeah, it's a good point. The keying algorithm is pretty similar to the 3D keyer. I said similar. I mean it's a similar concept. It's far more easier, I found, to use with the widgets, and maybe not as powerful because you don't have the 3D cube and the 3D functionality, but it's still using ellipsoid, 3D ellipsoid under the hood. it's a new take on it because you can actually, in this case, create different analysis point at different time in the shape. So in the shot. So if, let's say, for example, the color information were changing dramatically in between a certain frame, let's say, even like for flickering luminance type of problem, you can then go and then create many different analysis points, and then the algorithm will linearly interpolate in between the key result. For each analysis point, maybe I can just do an example, even if it's not necessary in this example. I can then create another analysis point with add, and then by default will bring me the same allocation for the picker box, but then I can put them, change them anywhere I want. I can also add new ones. So I have 2 background patches, or like 3 foreground if I need to. And then this is going to be, if I hit previous, you'll see that this is my first setup of picker box, and that's my second analysis. And then it's a bit crazy what I've done, but you see the interpolation in between the two.
Right. Well, that's really interesting, but something that came up on Facebook is physically based rendering, right? Or physically plausible even would be great. And you actually have something that's new in this release that I would say is both a glimpse into future technology maybe, as well as maybe a bit of a hack in the software. So why don't you go ahead and walk us through that?
Yeah. So the new node that's part of the Lightbox library is called GGX material. So this is a kind of using Lightbox as its full potential, let's say. And
exposing things under the hood.
Exactly, because the thing is with Lightbox, we make it easy to use if you just want to edit color, the color information of the scene through the light framework. We also added more feature like in the API to allow you to control as much as possible the vertex position, camera position, but actually we put so much information that you can actually redo the rendering of the scene using a Matchbox, and this is what is happening here. So if we look at the result right now, this is what you'll have today using substance and an IBL on a piece of geometry, and here's what the GGX material allow you to do. So it's actually right now using the some parameter of the material node to control the algorithm or
under the hood. So it's kind of what I think of it, like thinking of it is, it's kind of similar to using expressions in a way.
Exactly.
You're actually throwing in an axis that says axis, it doesn't say anything, but you're controlling something else. Yeah. So for this release of this is what you're doing. You're kind of hijacking these controls.
Yeah, because we didn't have any control called metallic, roughness, and specular in the UI. So the 3 control you need to keep in mind is specular red, specular G, and the shine. So the shine is the roughness. So as you increase it, you'll see that the object becomes more rough, and the reflection of the IBL is becoming more diffuse. And the good thing also to keep in mind is in PBR, the settings of the IBL don't matter anymore, because it's the material that will dictate, how rough it is, how diffuse it is, how reflective it is. And this is what's good about the model, is that you could parent the same IBL to a different model, and the same IBL will react differently, depending on the settings of those parameters. So if I put back the roughness to 0 and have a kind of a chrome ball look, I can then change the metallic aspect by reducing the specular G channel. So as I move it down, I'll get to more plastic kind of object. The specular also should not be at 100. It's pretty high. Usually it's around like 20 or 0.2 depending on the scale, but in this case it's 100. It's around 20. Also the specular have no impact if an object is completely metallic. So if you change it and you wonder why it doesn't do anything, it's normal in the model. As you reduce the metallic aspect of of a model, then the specular will have some impact on the hook. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. The thing to be careful about is make sure that if you use substance or any other texture on a model, you import that the specular is hidden or removed. Right. Because as you see, we're using those two channels for metallic and specular, and if a map is present, then it will override those, and then those will have no effects actually. So.
Oh, that's cool. I think it's an interesting, like I say, glimpse in the future, current hack, but actually could be some fun for people to play with.
Exactly.
Well, thanks so much for taking time to show us all these features. Appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Stephane Labrie, and today we're going to have a look at what we call among us the connected conform workflow. 2016 extension 1. Many people were asking us, in past, we've done a lot of research about conform and how to make easier, working with multiple sequences where you have multiple deliverables. So working in, post-production of advertising, well, you know what I'm talking about. You get 30 second, 50, 55, all version, different markets. You have, sometimes they look all the same, they are cut down, sometimes they are not really cut downs, but new editorial, so you don't know what you're gonna work with. So we spent a lot of time researching with different type of users to see, well, what could be the subset of functionality we would need to bring in the application to, correctly, address these workflows and these challenges. So we'll have a look in the application. So I am in 2016 extension 1. So what we've done for EDL, we've provided an automatic detection of sequence, meaning that if you get multiple EDLs, with the file naming convention, well, automatically we're going to detect the name pattern and we're going to create sequences for you. Well, so you don't have to think about which one you need to choose and which one needs to be part of a given sequence.
So as a user, you would name the EDL appropriately before?
Absolutely. Of course, that might not be the case, as our research showed that people in the tutorial, they know that they need to correctly name V1, V2, V3. But even if it's not the case, well, we also added a custom grouping. So that means that if you load these and you go inside and you import them, well, you're going to get a panel like this one where you can define the name of the sequence and on which track it should land when you conform the sequence. And of course, you see all the number of events per EDL. So that could be very handy, but most of the time, we've seen that going with the automatic detection, makes perfect sense. And but of course, you have options. It's Flame, right? So you can do things in different ways depending on your deliverable workflows and so on. So let's import these sequences. Second thing you'll see, and as you remember in 2015, 2016, we've added, real groups, so we take advantage of this organization on your desktop. So what we've done in extension 1 is we've connected the real group methodology with conform, meaning that when you're going to import content, we're going to create a special reel that we call the sequences reel, inside which we're going to create the sequences. So if you remember in the current version, 2015 or 16, depending what you use, well, depending of your last selected location on your desktop or in your media library, well, the sequences would have been, created there. But sometimes when you work with a lot of content, so you can be confused, where are these things? Well, right now, you can create multiple a real group, and the currently selected real group will be the place that you're going to work with your conform. So I created these sequences. Automatically they get open, so I can easily look at my 3 deliverable here, my 15, my 20, and my 30 second conform. 3 layers, that's great. So the first addition you'll see in this environment is the ability to group or to detect the source media you want to work with. So we've added in conform on the left side the creation of the source sequence. And a source sequence, if you had the pleasure to work with EDL in the past and online base, well, it's a C-sort EDL that is created. It's a sequence that contains all the sources that you need for your conform sequence. So you don't have to manually look at your EDL, your XML, and then try to come up with a sequence that is required for conform. So that's the first thing we've done. The creation of this sequence that you might use, in some workflows where you want maybe to publish out content that could be very useful in some workflows, allows to create a connectivity between the sources, something you never had in Flame, meaning that if you modify one of these segments that are in fact a source, well, you can share the modification. And we'll see it right now when I'm going to go in conform. And again, that's something you guys very often do is you get in EDL, the tape name of given event were wrong, and the media files that has this metadata is wrong. So then, of course, you're not going to link. So let's say I just changed the tape name of this event, that in this source sequence is in fact a piece of media, while the modification is now reflected in all my sequences. As you can see, all the events sharing the same media files now contain that thing. Of course, that kind of operation, can be undone by using the undo key. So now I'm back on the same structure I got with my conform. That's great. So now I'm ready to aggregate the content inside the application. So first, since I didn't use an AF or an XML, where you would find metadata, path, and file name, well, I'm using EDL. So I can define match criteria. And something else we've added in extension 1 is the ability to have this panel that doesn't require to be open, close. So you can define your different criteria and then search for the media. Since I'm using EDL, I'm going to use source timecode and tape name. And by the way, these settings are also saved. So on a project basis, you could define all these presets. So you don't have to do them, and redo them all the time. They're going to be there when you're going to need them. So I'm just going to use a search location, and I have some media files here. So I'm just going to go into my original camera data and back to the source sequence. These are matched based on time-coded tape name, and I'm going to link the sources. Of course, since I'm working with multiple sequences within this real group, well, all sequences got linked at the same time. So that's great. Again, I'm working with 2 sequences here, but I've seen projects where we have 59 deliverables. Right. You don't want to do that 59 times. So one time, and then you're saving time and spend more time in the application doing magic. So that's part of the source attribute. Something else, because you might need to define more or less footage you want to ingest. Here, my files are not that long, but when you work with RED, sometimes the camera starts but never ends, right? You have 5 hours of footage for some takes, and you're stuck if you want to use caching or you want to use proxies. So something we've added is the limit handle capabilities. That means that when you ingest the media, well, you can define, let's say, some frames as being the head and tails or the handles you want to use in your project. Something that you can also do within this group of sequences is, well, I'm going to unlink this segment, and I'm going to just limit the media. So I'm just going to press this thing, media, unlink, and since the property of this segment is shared across all the sequences, well, all the occurrences, as you can see, I have twice the usage shot here, and I can go back for that one. I can then define the limit handle, and since we know the media location, well, it's easy to just link back the source, and everything is good. That's great. Same thing as far as sharing metadata for the pre-processing option. You remember when you work with RED and ARRI, you have all these metadata setting in the media hub, right? Or you can find them back in the pre-processing. Here I'm working with QuickTime files, so let's go in the RGB lot. Or if I had RED or ARRI, well, in this panel I would find all the media option. So I can, from the pre-processing option, define color management, lookup tables, color transform. So let's say I use this color transformation. If I activate that thing, well, that's cool. I get this nice look from a color transform, or that could be a lot. This pre-processing option is a source side effect, right? And if I move to my sequences, well, I'll see that all my segments sharing the same footage are affected.
So it doesn't matter in which sequence you actually make that change.
It doesn't
you
matter,
don't have to
exactly.
do it in the original.
No, in fact, yeah, you could use the original, or you could use the source sequence, or any deliverable that you have to work with. Of course, it can be undone easily, and then it reflects in all the sequences part of this group. Something that we've added in the conform view is the ability to, just like we've done for the source sequence, where we've done an analysis of all the sequences, we look at the media files we need, we let you define handles to ingest the media that you need. Well, we also have a mechanism that will create what we call a shot sequence. A shot sequence is, I'm going to look at all the sequences. I'm going to find the matching shots in the story order. So the source sequence is, in fact, a C-mode sort from file name, tape name, time code, ascending time code, right? In this context, what I want to see is all the content I'm going to work with in the story order. Here I have my 3-layer effects that are, foreground, blue screen, and background, and here I have my other shots in my sequence. When I create my shot sequence, and as you can see I have another sequence part of my group, this sequence creates a shared segment, meaning that effects applied on segment could be used to synchronize other sequences. So in this case, I have a time warp on this segment. If I right-click, we've added the navigation capability. So if you see the shared segments here, I can see in which sequences this time warp and the shot is located. So I can use that to navigate, and of course, I can see the content in the other sequence. Any modification that I would do to this effect, so let's go to the time warp. So let's add some trail, just because everybody likes trail these days. Like that, well, that's cool. If I look at my 22nd version, well, of course, nothing was changed, but nothing prevents me to go back on the one that has trail and right-click on the segment and sync the shared segments. And by doing so, as you have seen in this part of the interface, well, we told you that we perform a replace on 3 segments in 3 clips, meaning that, well, if I use my navigation tool here to go to my, let's say, 32nd, well, I'm going to find the same time warp with the same effects. So again, like I said earlier, well, I'm working with 3 sequences. Let's say you work with 60 sequences. Well, you don't want to do that every time. And that applies to any timeline effect and even BFX. So you could be, color correcting these, right-click, and as you can see here, there's a chain icon, right? That chain icon means, well, these are shared segments and they are a relationship in other sequences of your group. So that's covering the conform aspect of this multiple sequence conform. Of course, we know that when these sequences are conform, well, you are probably ready to continue when you work in a work group as distributing the content for other, flare, flame assist, or even other flame system in your facility. So as you might remember, in 2015 extension 2, we've added capabilities of token and naming convention and I'm going to just go into my shot sequence. Shot sequence, by the way, is a great sequence to use when you want to distribute content because, and again, that was another request. So the request in the past was, can you create a tool that will allow me to know what is the maximum amount of media I need to work with for a given shot? Well, the shot sequences does that. After the analysis of all the sequences used in this group, well, you can see that this shot is the longest usage of media that you can find in all your deliverable sequence. So from this sequence, well, you probably want to do your naming convention. And something we've added in extension 1, if we go in the preferences for timeline, is we've added the default shape shot name. So I'm just going to create, well, FX. I'm just going to name my FX underscore. And I'm going to use a new token that is the background index. The index that is part of the list of token, well, counts the shot. So shot 1, shot 2, shot 3. But of course, when I come in this area where I have a multi-track effect, well, I don't want to have shot number 15 for the back plate and shot number 1 for the foreground elements. So what's going to happen when I'm going to rename now that I'm using, I'm just going to rename shot, and now that I'm using this default background segment, well, everything will be correctly named. And if we go in conform, as we know, there's a nice column with the shot name, and if I sort, well, my FX9 contains my foreground and my background elements. So again, you had to do it manually in previous releases. Well, now it's automatic, it's easy and fun, and you can see the result in conform. So I provided naming convention to my sequences. Of course, you might ask, well, what's going to happen with my deliverables? Well, if you go to the 32nd version, you're also going to find back the right naming convention with the right, naming on the right shot, correspondence. So everything is there. Something we've added in this extension is the ability to do a kind of publish, but internally to the application. And this is something you find also in the conform view. It's the create batch group. So based on the naming convention and on the selection of content, so I'm just going to select these. And based on their naming convention, we're going to create batch group at the destination that you want. It could be on the desktop, on your library, or your shared library, or you can even manually select a location. So I'm just going to create, let's create a folder here, or a library, why not? So VFX, and that's going to be my pick destination. So I'm going to press the create batch group. I'm going to use this, and automatically what happened is I get one batch per stack of effect. So again, you had to manually create them in past releases. So now all the batches and all the content required and all the definition of the render node is automatically done for you. So using the backplate timecode tape name naming convention to populate the render node and batch is already done for you. So no need to do 55 times t-click on the render node. It's there for you. But also, as you might have seen, eagle eye, the sequence I'm working with here, a new version track was added. And this version track, if I go in the timeline tab, is the destination of the batch output. And as you can see here, we do have the link mechanism. So what does it mean? It means that my shot sequence, well, shows the back clip of all the setups from batch, and all my deliverables also got the synchronization with the right media span of each batch setup, meaning that you're going to be able to load these, well, on your station or using Flare on the distributed workflow in a work group, do your visual effects, and using a tool that we call replace on shared segment, you're going to be able to replace once and then get the repercussion of your change in all your sequences. Oh. So as you can see, from conform to the distribution of the work to a group and then the final approval in Flame, I think extension 1 should probably make these workflows that sometimes they are very complex, and it should be more simple to use, and you would spend more time in batch and in the creative tool set instead of having to swap shot like crazy.
And spending much more time managing that, which
exactly.
actually spending an extraordinary amount of time doing
Absolutely. That. Again, 3 sequences is easy, but as we know, it's very easy to get tons of deliverables to produce.
Well, thanks so much for taking time to show us.
Thank you very much, and I hope you guys will have fun with extension 1.
Thanks, John. There is more on Flame and details on the new pricing and packaging on fxguide.com. Thanks for being with us, and until next time, see ya. For more industry news, in-depth features, podcasts and forums, check out fxguide.com. And for visual effects training, check out fxphd.com.